has anyone ever encountered that kind of in the Bay Area, with hostility to religion?
Well, I encountered it as being a newspaper reporter who covers religion. I mean, newspaper city rooms are not known to be the most spiritual or religious environments. And I'm working on a memoir right now about some of my own searching, which I never really got into when I was covering the subject. I tried to keep that separate. One of the reasons I sort of developed a persona at the paper of like sort of the irreverent religion writer. I really pushed it, partly because I really was irreverent, but also I played it to the hilt because the last thing you want anyone in a newspaper to think is you actually believe this stuff. And they won't trust you if you think you believe it. And it's not just me. People would jokingly call me Father Latin, in the office, and every once in a while somebody would think, "Oh, you're really a priest?" Or, no, it's just a joke. But I would have other people come up in the city room where Julian works, and if they were going to church, they'd almost like whisper to me, like, "Don't tell anyone, but I go to the Presbyterian church," and it's like people are more in the closet about that than anything.
Being gay, yes.
Oh, definitely about being gay.
Right.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's like the last taboo. And that's not just the newspaper business, but maybe the newspaper business in the Bay Area is an extreme version of it. I don't know.
No, I think it's the newspaper business.
Well, I'm surprised there was such hostility. I found that I had covered every topic imaginable for over a decade, for 15 years, and I didn't know that there was such a base of faith in San Francisco until I started writing about this group and learning about the very strong faith traditions in the city. People who come from all walks of life, from all across the globe, and settle in San Francisco and bring their faith traditions with them. I think it's a part of the city that doesn't really get covered, but I think it's there, and I actually feel that it's much stronger than people perceive. Certainly much stronger than the stereotype. Now when we cover religion in the local papers, it's, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence have received communion from the Archbishop, unknowingly. But, every week you have these strong people of faith, or these people of very strong faith, I should say, attending Mass or lighting candles or carrying on their own faith traditions. And I think it's this unseen part of San Francisco that is very much alive from what I have seen. That surprised me. It really did.
I feel like there's an aspect of power that runs through a lot of this. Even going back to what we were saying earlier about doubt and whether or not there's the freedom to question or not. I forget the exact title, but there was a piece on the hermeneutics blog that I contribute to recently which looked at why some people in the evangelical tradition have fallen away and why others don't. Because some people come through a season of doubt stronger and others come through a time of doubt with a lot of animosity. And that woman was talking about the difference between kind of an indoctrination posture, where you have very little power and a lot of power is held by whoever is teaching you, and you just have to kind of, trust and accept this paradigm exactly as it's handed to you, versus, I don't remember the term that she used, but a different mode that doesn't have such a centralized notion of power. And I think a lot of people's negative reaction to certain traditions probably has to do with, in a lot of cases, I think, a negative experience with a particular institution that's often trying to protect and consolidate its own power. And I think that is one factor in a lot of the hostility that I think can sometimes be provoked because of how the evangelical church has sought political power. I think that's a part of the negative reaction that sometimes is provoked.
Well, I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, so I was ringing your doorbell at 10 in the morning on Saturdays with the Watchtower Awake. So I had a lot of hostility coming at me when I was a kid, and also the pretty girls at my school would sometimes answer the door. So I also had those conflicts of, great, I'm in a suit and a tie here with my dad and my Bible, and I have a crush on this girl, and I see her in science every day, and so now I get to explain to her, no, I wasn't going to a funeral, I was dressed in a suit. I think a lot of my school friends thought I went to a lot of funerals because they see me there. But if I was actually at their door with a Bible, then I would get called out.
Are you supposed to only like date your own kind, or is that?
Yeah, aliens. Yeah, it's that you only date and marry your own kind. They call it, if you do not do that, then you have married out of the truth.
Married out of the truth.
But I was a virgin until I was 25, and I married the first girl I had sex with. And then the second girl I had sex with, I was 38. That was after I found out my ex-wife was cheating on me for a while. But she was still a Jehovah's Witness, and I was the heathen husband who stayed faithful. So it was,
It's the stuff of a second novel. Good.
it's a memoir called Phone Agoraphobia that my agent is waiting for.
All right.
Okay, all right.
Well, I got you to plug that. All right. Now, and you're right. I'd like to say, Julian, you're right. There is another side. There's the hostility that I spoke of, which I have. By the way, I might even say there's a flip side to this. Maybe I can push that question a little further. So I think sometimes there's a hostility to religion. I think Anna put her finger on the fact that a lot of people have been hurt by organized religion or by a specific part of some organized religion, and they're hurt and they feel angry. Other people may have a kind of a more philosophical dislike of religion because they grew up, maybe they grew up in a secular household and they just think it's dumb. You know, why there's no God. So there are a lot of reasons why people might react that way. And then, of course, as you said, there are plenty of religious and spiritual people in the Bay Area. But there's a flip side of that, which actually you just touched on, which is the embarrassment of being religious. It's embarrassing to be religious in some ways in the modern world. Not just, and this is not just a San Francisco thing. It's not in some ways, Don, you touched on it in the newsroom.
It depends what world you're talking about. So
Yeah, it's exactly.
Because journalism, the universities, publishing,
And I was thinking
not the real world.
That's true. That's it. That always reminds me of the old thing about when you go to college and everybody says, this isn't the real world. Well, wait a minute, yes it is. This is. But, part of the real world. But there's an embarrassment, I think, not just in journalism, which of course is a very unique role, you're right, but I don't think, not embarrassment, but maybe kind of it's unclear how to express religiosity in the United States. Maybe it's always been thus, because we're such a polyglot, mixed culture, but I think it's getting more so. Would you agree with me that it might be getting a little bit tougher to be a religious figure, a religious person openly in the United States?
In religion, there's a group called the Religion News Writers Association, people who do what I did at the Chronicle and Examiner. And some of the years ago when I first started, it was even more of a taboo to express your religious faith like at one of our conventions and talk like a really a true believer. As a matter of fact, a couple of the best religion reporters in the country back then, Ken Briggs at the New York Times and Russ Chandler at the LA Times, were both ordained ministers, like you saying. They hid that fact for a while. But they actually did hide the fact that they had been ordained. They were embarrassed about it. But now, the last few times, it's been a few years, I went to a Religion News Writers Association, some people were almost testifying about their faith. And so I actually saw the opposite.
So
at least
going
in
that way.
in that world, I've kind of seen the opposite.
Do you think there's a connection between that and postmodernism? Because it was really interesting to me to be doing my graduate studies in the early 2000s and seeing a transition in scholarship from this idea that the scholar is completely unbiased and you couldn't possibly have any sort of prejudice in your work, to gradually coming to grips with the fact that we all come from a particular perspective and standpoint, and that's always going to shape the work that we do, which doesn't invalidate our findings, but is something to be acknowledged. And it was interesting to me to see that in the scholarly world, and yet to also have experience with journalism and a culture of objectivity that didn't seem like it, at least in those days, had quite reckoned with that and didn't know how to exactly. So, I mean, do you think
in journalism,